I wanted to respond to, well, I wanted to add some to my YouTubes and Facebook, but I wanted to respond to some comments that are very cruel. I haven't told a lie about any of this. I didn't even find out about my kidnapping, since I'm the one doing the explaining, till after I was flown out in Mr. Flint's. And he was shot in Lawrenceville, Georgia. I'll say this again because you wouldn't know where I'm coming from on it. When I was doing a book in Marietta, Georgia, MD A License to Kill. And it was about programming, mind control, about programming people to kill. It can be a gun, it can be a knife, or it can be done with making them appear as suicides when actually they were programmed to. Just like the Virginia Tech shooting some years ago where 33, I believe, were shot, and the shooter shot himself because he was programmed to, just like James Holmes of Aurora, Colorado. And they have him in a mental, or did, in a mental institution. And he's not insane. That can be proven. They have used the mental health system, which I've tried to tell about, to lock up people who've been programmed, who are victims of mind control. There was a movie made some years and years ago that dealt with a little bit about programming people to shoot. But anybody can Google mind control these days. You don't get what I'm telling about, that these were deliberately done in patterns, and that I found out about my kidnapping after I was out at Mr. Flint's. But then I looked back, and it was easy to see, because why were all the Brits in Moulton, Alabama, or places in Georgia where I was almost killed, and then up here on the Appalachian Trail? Sure, Brits do the Appalachian Trail, but not like they did here at all, and Germans, and some Americans. But most of all, the Americans had just rather not hear it, because it tells their dirty deeds that they did in kidnapping me and taking down my father, and using the Brits to fight against themselves, to which the United States is the Illuminati. And some of my own people there are Illuminati that helped take down my father and kidnap me, and they're so corrupt. But I wanted to mention Larry Flint, and I think he was shot in Lawrenceville, Georgia. He says here that I knew who was responsible for his shooting in 1978. And he tells here that, no, that was in something else. Okay. Anyway, this is, I'm Margaret Ann Windsor, and this is 1939 when I was born, and this is Uncle George and Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt, the first, and I'm laughing, lady. And this is Roosevelt and Elizabeth's lady mother. They called her Queen, and this is the mother of Roosevelt, and he's Jewish. Can I say that, since he helped set up all this and helped in my kidnapping? He appointed John Kennedy, Joe Kennedy, ambassador to England, U.S. ambassador to England in 1936. That's when a lot of this went down, the takedown of my father, King Edward VIII, who was married to Claudia Ruth O'Keeffe, my mom, a school teacher from Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, sister to artist Georgia O'Keeffe, American. And in 36 is when my grandfather died in January, I believe, of 36. My father assumed the throne, and he was married to my mom, so she was queen. They took him down with cold-blooded lies, and so many were in on it. They're the Illuminati, the ones that are in control now. Your United Nations is just a front. So anybody who cares to look or check out anything could have checked out things that I've told. I haven't told a lie. In fact, I can't even get on the horrible things that have been done to me. and to have people. There's a lot of people that say nice things that know everybody knows it's the truth. I couldn't make it up. For God's sake, if I could, I'd try writing another book and really come up with a doozy. But anyway, Mr. Flint was shot and I was flown out there because in the book I wrote about it was about mind control and putting chips in people and heart bypasses. I'd work for doctors, and the victim is unaware. Even if they're awake, it's done at a low level frequency they're not aware they're getting. And it's like the dog whistle that's done, and you can't hear that, but the dog can. So they're being programmed, they're not even aware, and if they were, and they tried to tell a doctor, this, what do you think the doctors have done on all this that I've told, the mind control murders? Nothing. They've said nothing about it. In fact, James Holmes, I'll go back to him, is being treated for mental illness, which is the most cruel thing anybody could do. Would you like to go in and have cancer and be treated for the flu and turn loose? That's not even a good example. This is my dad, King Edward VIII. I'm going to show you again. This is his grandsons. Let me get that up. It's blurry. I don't have I'm lucky to have a home at times. This is my son Mark, who's there after me. These are old photographs, obviously, and this is Scott, heir after Mark, my second son. Now then, I wanted to show Wallace Simpson, and excuse me for having to do this. I grabbed this and that. She married a double, an imposter. This is just one of them, in 1937. And they said my father abdicated, King Edward VIII abdicated to marry her. Well, this is a double. And my father, excuse me, was married to my mom always. She was queen. And all these good people, helped take him down, that I'm going to mention in a minute, and I have been. But this woman has always known. She was, if not in the castle when I was kidnapped, she certainly knew about my kidnapping, who my father is, the real king, not the double that married Wallace. By the way, I'll go back to this. This is just one of the pictures of the, there were several doubles, like they were used for Hitler or anyone else, for movie stars. But anyway, this is the fake monarchy. She's illegal, and so are all of these who are very wealthy, and here's, I won't mention that. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here. And if I'm skipping around, why, it's the best I can do under the conditions. The mind controls that I wrote about, like Larry McDonald, Larry McDonald went down the plane. He was the doctor I wrote about, urologist from Atlanta. And there's a lot surrounding the hospital he worked for that my attorney, who's deceased now, but that's been a long time ago. But anyway, he was the doctor there, and he was shot. The plane he was on, supposed to be on the KL, was shot down August the 31st of 83 en route from Juneau, Alaska to Seoul, South Korea. And he was taken, Nixon, Richard Nixon, former president, Watergate and all this fits together. He was taken off the plane. He was en route. What they were going, I don't know why they were going. And I'm not sure that Larry McDonald wasn't taken off and it faked, his death faked, but 260 plus people went down in the ocean to do that. They veered into Russian airspace, and the Russian MiG shot the plane down. And I'll leave it at that. This is Timothy McVeigh, who said that the Army put a chip up his buttocks, and this one can be proven. Brian, I can't think of his last name, is in prison now, that was supposed to have helped him. This man is a victim, and he was put to death, and I'm not talking about this person here, William. He's a crook just like his grandmother, and knows all of this, and have said nothing. This is a book that this was in, and I was already telling about this because church gave this book to me. I wish I'd kept the book. It was a small book, but it was just too much for me to keep carrying around because I was kept homeless and without funds. And it's called the implantable biochip, and that's what I was telling about. But the biochip is will be the agency by which all financial transactions are registered, etc. But it's what they do with mind control. They place people in the end. I mean, what kind of life is there? And this is Project Lucid, the name of it. And this talks about being about the prophecies. And if you got all the little pieces, it does really come out that way. It makes you stop and think. Anyway, one of the other mind control murders that really, I'm not going to get into the list, but this is Gabby Gifford, and she was a former congressman. This was Tucson, Arizona, where the person was programmed to shoot. She was married to Mark Kelly, who's a twin to Scott Kelly. They're both astronauts. And that's my son's names. And no, I don't just pick things out of thin air. There's a background on it all, and obviously I've tried putting it up. And unless you piece it together a little bit or care to look, or that you care at all, so I'll leave it at that. Because when I was kidnapped, I was taken to Moulton, Alabama, that's Lawrence County, and placed there and given the name of a twin, Peggy Ann Dempsey. I married a Childers. And the twins come in on it. And she was a former congressman, and he's NASA, space, and that's what Huntsville was. I was taken there, kidnapped in 41, taken nearby Moulton, Alabama. And Huntsville began to be the space center in 1955. And that's just about, 45 miles perhaps from Moulton to Huntsville. And I worked for the district attorney there in 1980 when I was almost killed April Fool Day. And the book just totally, I was doing the book. And then I was flown out to Mr. Flint's, and a little later I found out about my kidnapping and who my dad is, and I can remember. And by the way, the Brits told me, and Germans, or I would never have known. Now I want to go over and remind you that I don't have George's picture out, but I've put it up enough. George O'Keeffe's my aunt. My mom was married to my father, King Edward VIII. He was still alive in October of 86, and so was my mom. They had stolen his identity. That's how huge this plot was. It's the Illuminati and the Freemasons. And now then, there's some things came up about JFK as the son of Joe that was ambassador Roosevelt. You got the Jews input in this too, and people get offended that it's supposed to be okay that the Jews did this to me. I was a baby. My father didn't do this. My father, and I have to wonder about the whole thing about the Jews, because I'll leave it there, okay? Because that's when they're, after my kidnapping, they went back and took over Israel and et cetera, et cetera. And illegal treaties were signed by, if it wasn't her, it was the ones close to her, and they're illegal. And it's treason. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read this to you since people want to. The way to get someone, I'm showing my bed here, I guess, is you say they're crazy. And they're using that on Trump right now. This book that's been put out by this man who's, it's inflammatory and it's a lie about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is totally capable. It's the rest of them that should be locked up. They may have been mentally alert and everything, but they sure rotten crooks, and they're part of the Illuminati, and always have been since George Washington. So, I don't know. I mean, I was going to tell about that, but I want to tell about this. And then I'll go back to that. In researching about my father, and some things I can remember because I was 2 years old after I found out. let me put it this way. I don't know if I can hold it right or not so you can see it. Anyway, I was trying to give you background. Anyway, I could remember being brought over in a picture like that of my dad with him holding me in my christening gown. So the two people that brought me over, and that's all I remember. I can remember being taken from the castle. I remember who took me. I remember the woman that used to put me in the bathtub when I was little. I could never see her face. I did see part of the face. She was a nurse, caretaker of me, I guess, nursemaid, that took me in the middle of the night in the castle. And my father, because of the addendum to the false abdication, it was illegal abdication. My father did nothing of what they were saying. But anyway, I do remember her, and to a degree. And she had on her white, and it was dark. Everything was dark. And we got down the hallway. She turned in to the right, and it was a little table there, and it was dark. And she set me down right, the door's right here, and she sets me right in front of it. And then she goes into the little, a kitchenette, and was going to get something out of the cabinet, and she lit a candle. And about that time, two men opened the door and jerked me, and I'm being taken down the hall, and it's dark. And the next thing I remember now is when I was handed over to Lina Dempsey and that family, and given the name of Peggy, a twin. Both of them were dead, killed by Lina. She was a psychopath and unwed. And I grew up in, you can't even tell it, the horror. So, now what was I going to try to get to here? I wanted to, I was saying this about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, they're trying to say now that he's not capable of doing his job, that they're throwing the mental health at him, which I could have told you was coming. Stop and ask yourself, if you don't believe this, you could go back and check any of it out. I got enough up there, YouTube, Facebook, the last 6 years. Anybody could check any part of it out, and if just a part of it's true that you're able to check out, you pretty much know the rest of it is too. It's very shocking to me that, what if this is one of you that was programmed like James Holmes was, and you're on death row, or Scott Peterson, that's another one, Scott Peterson. His attorney was Mark Garagos, and I think Mark Garagos is a good attorney. He did all he could, because nobody wants to tell about mind control being used to kill and all this. And how do you think all these have happened? The Las Vegas paddock, etc. Through mind control, and it's mass. They can do it mass now. Edward Snowden was shipped off to Russia. WikiLeaks has tried to tell the truth. Julian Assange, which is a great hero, and I almost am afraid to say anything because I don't want. He's an honest man, so great, and to have lived the life he has for simply telling the truth and have the guts to do it. And so I wanted to mention, though, this, if I can get it in order. It was last night they were telling on Coast to Coast some things, and they mentioned John Kennedy, JFK. Now, he was flying into the embassy when his father was appointed with the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Bilderbergers, George VI, illegal, but he was my uncle. He had to take his brother down with lies and install this woman who's a fake and a fraud. She knows every bit of this, so she sat quiet and not made any effort to help. In fact,